Hi everyone, this is Dr. Kathy Dooley. I am the co-founder, lead instructor, and content generator for Immaculate Dissection. And we are so excited to bring you the ID6 coursework, Assessing Movement Subsystems. We actually beta tested this course in Japan with translation. That was a 4-hour course with the amazing Kaori Tani. And we also did a beta test in Australia with the amazing Stu Bush in Melbourne. And then we did our final beta test with a 12-hour course in London. So we think we figured out what you guys need and want from ID6 coursework. It's the last of our weekend coursework. We promise no more full weekend courses. From there on out, we'll do specialty courses, but we think this is a really important course to tie in all of the things that we learn about in assessment and human movement. And it's not required to take any of the other IED courses. Of course, encouraged to take all 6, but if ID6 is your first course, it's a fun portal of entry into what we teach in ID. And if it's the last of your courses, it really does encapsulate all the things that you've learned in the previous courses. So what is assessing movement subsystems? Well, it's for us looking at the different ways that we develop with neurodevelopment and in a bit, but also as an adult and how we need to change what we cue in neurodevelopment. And based upon the fact that we have foot arches, the fact that our heads aren't huge, and those types of things. And the 5 subsystems are the intrinsic abdominal stability system, originally coined by Andre Vleeming. And we just take it to the next level of looking at the functional anatomy of how you would put that into place in your clinical practice or on your gym floor. And we could not be more thrilled to show you how the intrinsics then carry over into how we do human ambulation. Like for instance, the deep longitudinal subsystem, which is sagittal plane ipsilateral stabilization, mostly through the posterior, and how if you have an intrinsic loss, how it can creep into that one-sided destabilization process. And then how that then can set us up for things like scoliosis or even functional scoliosis, where we're starting to now affect the contralateral side through the lateral subsystem of movement through hip hiking on a stabilized leg. And then how that carries over from frontal plane stability into transverse plane disorientation through the anterior and posterior oblique subsystems. And that's transverse plane, obviously, the cross patterning along our bodies. And so with these 5 subsystems, we use perturbation, movement analysis, and we have found it to be largely successful and immediately implementable into your clinical practice the following Monday. We've gotten so much positive feedback of how it makes everything so clear and how easy it is to implement, and how it takes what you may have learned in other courses and then puts it into more perspective with the functional anatomy of what's happening. And we do warn you that we might be slightly a little bit contrarian or even different than what you've learned in other neurodevelopmental courses or other movement subsystem courses. And that's okay, because if you're being contrarian, sometimes it just means you're thinking about the person in front of you that might be a little bit different than the way that you learned. So in ID, we're all about education, and we're not about certification. We don't call ourselves ID certified. We just want you guys to open your mind to thinking about the person in front of you and avoiding dogma and really appreciating the assessment process. So let's get to it. What do you learn about in ID6? Well, you'll learn about the fact that intrinsic abdominal stability problems based upon the 7 diaphragms of anatomy may show up in the patient in certain findings and perturbations. We look for if someone is more flexion disoriented or extension disoriented. If someone's more flexion disoriented, we start them in things like supine 90-90, which you probably have seen in other coursework online with amazing videos. And it's an amazing system of being able to train bilateral ipsilateral stabilization. By ipsilateral, I mean one side of the body. And then you can also encourage contralateral stability later. But at first we train ipsilateral stability patterns. And then we start to say, okay, can the person actually maintain what we call the laws of 45s, these 45-degree angles, and then create really nice bilateral ipsilateral stabilization? And then we start to progress them into being able to use the limbs or use the arms, and then move over onto one side for ipsilateral stabilization to prop themselves up, but still maintaining all of their spinal stability, which is more challenging than it looks. It's pretty cool. And then we use digital cues and foot cues because the adult has foot arches. We're able to use a lot of different parts of the body to neurologically create load share. Our favorite term in ID is load share. And then moving into things like we can create ipsilateral stabilization here with lifting, and then contralateral stabilization to the opposite foot, which is super fun. And being able to assess how someone fails means how you want to cue and focus, whether it's ipsilateral or contralateral stabilization. We can also go prone. So we love showing prone to not only focus on extensors being able to be in balance with flexors, basically starting with a crocodile breath and then moving up into a prone prop, and then starting to lift limbs, because the multifidus and transversus abdominis, largely multifidus, will start to act in any limb movement, TVA and lower extremity movement. And as we start to move a limb, we can focus on ipsilateral stabilization by lifting, one side, versus contralateral stabilization where we're doing opposite patterning. So we can train ipsi or contra, which is pretty cool. And we just train that with something called a modified Superman, where we can start to lift an entire limb up, ipsi, and then contra. And then we can move things into like a 4.5 month position, where the baby's starting to externally rotate the femur, and then as they lift the foot up, that's internal rotation centration. So we can train ipsilateral stabilization by keeping this arm and this left limb down and then picking up the opposite hand, which is a pretty cool way to light up the ipsilateral system. Or you can leave the foot down and train the contralateral system by picking up the opposite side hand, which fires you up in a completely different way, which is really, really cool. We can then elevate the person into a more advanced position by doing the exact same thing, leaving the foot down, and then we can start to train contra versus ipsi. And then we can move people into quadruped, which is really fun challenge, and we can either keep their knees down or we can lift them up. Not so much in a bear, we don't really do that as much in ID. We keep people a little bit closer to the ground in more like a leopard crawl position. And then again, maintaining our ID cues that you'll learn about in the coursework. We then can train things like contralateral stabilization and ipsilateral stabilization here. As I pick up my right hand, you can see I'm stabilizing with my left hand, left foot for ipsilateral stabilization, and then contralateral through my left hand and my right foot. And then I can create fun challenges by doing ipsilateral lifting and here, and then contralateral lifting. It's going to be super, super fun to see how one fails and what a person needs to work on with their corrective strategies based upon ID assessment. So hopefully you'll come and learn the perturbations associated with 7 diaphragms as well as the 5 subsystems. You'll come and learn the different corrective strategies associated with each of these that are also basically assessment processes in and of themselves. We're right here at Catalyst Sport on January 25th and 26th, 2020. And if you missed that one, don't worry, we have multiple ID6s in 2020 and beyond if you're watching this video a little bit later. So hopefully you'll come and join us. Today is the last day of the early bird special, save $100 in the next 24 hours if you want to join us at ID6 in New York City. At any ID, if you sign up 30 days before, you get $100 off. I would definitely take the savings. And if you sign up for 2 courses, we have special coupon codes that you'll see within the description of this YouTube. Also, I'll, in the YouTube, put under the descriptions some accessory videos where you can start to study the subsystems. I've written some articles about it and made some extra videos. So if you're super interested, we hope that you join us. It's going to be 15 hours of a lot of fun. We've had great feedback on it, and we hope to have created a course for you that's very easily implementable into your practice the following Monday. Hopefully we'll see you soon at ID6.